On the coldest night of 1997, a 7-year-old boy knelt beside his bed and asked God for an angel. Not for toys, not for money, but for someone who could stop his father from crying when he thought no one was watching. That same night, in a broken barn at the edge of town, a woman was freezing, alone, unconscious, and praying for her life to end. The snow had been falling since sunset, thick and heavy, swallowing the world in silence. In the countryside outside Miller's Creek, winter didn't just arrive, it conquered. The fields lay buried like forgotten dreams. Fences vanished beneath white drifts, and the old wooden barn behind. Daniel Harper's farmhouse groaned, under the weight of cold it had known too many times before. Daniel Harper was 36 and already exhausted by life. A widower for 3 years, he carried grief the way some men carried scars, quietly, deeply, and without complaint. His wife, Emily, had died of pneumonia one winter, not unlike this one, leaving him alone with their only child, Noah. Since then, Daniel had learned how to cook, how to braid a boy's hair before school, how to smile when his heart felt empty. What he had not learned was how to stop missing her. That night, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee long gone cold. Noah was already in bed, the soft glow of a night lamp spilling into the hallway. Daniel listened to the wind howl and wondered, not for the first time, how long a man could live with half a heart. Upstairs, Noah knelt beside his bed. His hands were small, his pajamas too thin for the cold creeping through the walls. He whispered carefully, as if God might be sleeping. "Dear God," he said, "I know you're busy, but my dad is really sad." He paused, biting his lip. "I hear him cry at night sometimes. I pretend I'm asleep so he doesn't feel bad." Another pause. "Can you send us an angel? Someone nice, someone who stays." Outside, unseen and unknown to them both, a woman stumbled through the snow toward the barn. Her name was Clara Whitmore. She had once been a schoolteacher, once had dreams, laughter, and a home filled with books and light. But life had stripped her layer by layer: an abusive marriage, a stillborn child, a divorce that left her with nothing but shame and debt. When the last bus dropped her miles from anywhere, she had walked until her legs gave out. The barn door had been unlocked. Clara collapsed inside, curling near the hay, her breath shallow, fingers blue. She wasn't praying anymore. She was done asking. Hours later, Daniel heard a sound. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then again, something softer. A cry. He grabbed his coat, heart racing. Farmers learned early. Strange sounds at night meant trouble. He followed the noise to the barn, lantern shaking in his hand. And then he saw her. A woman, barely conscious, covered in frost, lips trembling. "Hey, hey!" he shouted, rushing forward. Her eyes fluttered open for a second. She whispered one word, was all. Daniel didn't think. He wrapped her in his coat, lifted her. She was lighter than she should have been, and carried her back to the house. Upstairs, Noah woke to voices. He peeked through the railing and saw his father carrying someone. A woman glowing strangely in the yellow light. For a moment, Noah's breath caught. "Dad," he whispered. Daniel looked up. "Go back to bed, buddy." But Noah didn't move. He stared at the woman's pale face. "Is she the angel?" he asked softly. Daniel froze. He had no answer. And far away, beneath layers of pain and cold, Clara felt warmth for the first time in years. Clara woke to warmth. Not the imagined warmth of dreams, but real warmth, thick blankets, the steady crackle of a fireplace, the smell of soup. For a moment, panic surged through her. She tried to sit up, her body protesting with sharp pain. "Easy," a man's voice said gently. She turned her head and saw Daniel Harper sitting in a chair nearby, his face lined with worry but kind in a way she hadn't seen in years. "You're safe," he said. "You were freezing. I found you in the barn." Tears welled in Clara's eyes before she could stop them. "I didn't mean to," her voice broke. "I just needed somewhere to disappear." Daniel didn't ask questions. He simply handed her a mug. "My son's asleep upstairs," he said. "You scared him half to death." Her breath caught. "I'm sorry." "No," Daniel replied quietly. "I think you were meant to be there." Over the next days, Clara stayed. First because she was too weak to leave, then because no one asked her to. Noah watched her like a miracle he was afraid might vanish. He brought her drawings, asked her stories. Once, very seriously, he asked, "Do angels get sad?" Clara smiled through tears. Sometimes. She helped where she could, reading to Noah, fixing broken shelves, laughing softly at dinner. The house began to feel different, lighter, warmer. Daniel noticed it too. One evening after Noah had fallen asleep, Clara stood by the window staring at the snow. "I didn't want to live anymore," she confessed. "That night, I was done." Daniel swallowed hard. "Then why are you still here?" She turned to him. "Because a child prayed," she said, "and someone answered." They didn't fall in love overnight. Healing never worked that way. But they chose each other, slowly, bravely, imperfectly. By spring, Clara had a job at the local school. By summer, laughter filled the farmhouse again. And one night, Noah prayed once more. "Thank you, God," he whispered, "for sending the angel, and for letting her stay." Clara heard him. She smiled. Not an angel, just a woman who was saved. By the autumn of 1998, the farmhouse no longer felt like a place holding its breath. The walls seemed warmer, even before the fire was lit. The mornings carried the sound of... He never said it out loud, but the house had started to feel alive again. Clara had been living there for almost a year, not as a guest anymore, not as a miracle found in the snow, but as someone who belonged. She worked at the elementary school in town now, teaching reading and writing to children who reminded her painfully and beautifully of the life she once believed she would never have. Every morning she walked to the bus stop with Noah, her scarf fluttering in the wind, her laughter light but careful, as if she still feared the world might take this happiness back if she laughed too loudly. Noah adored her, but children in their honesty sometimes see what adults avoid. One evening, as Clara helped him with homework, he looked up suddenly and asked, "Are you going to leave someday?" The question struck her like a stone. She forced a smile. "Why would you think that?" He shrugged. "People always leave. Mom left. You came from nowhere. Angels go back to heaven, don't they?" Clara's throat tightened. She closed the book slowly. "I'm not an angel," she said softly. "I'm just someone who stayed." But that night, long after Noah was asleep, Clara sat alone on the porch steps, staring into the dark fields. Old fears crept back in, the ones she thought she had outrun. The voice that whispered she didn't deserve this peace, that she was borrowing happiness meant for someone else. Daniel found her there. "You disappear when you're hurting," he said gently, wrapping a coat around her shoulders. She didn't look at him. "What if I ruin this?" she asked. "What if one day you wake up and realize I don't belong here?" Daniel sat beside her, silent for a long moment. "I wake up every day afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of loving again, afraid of losing again." He turned to her then, eyes steady. "But I also wake up grateful, because my son laughs again, because the house doesn't echo anymore." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to be another loss," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "You're not a miracle that came to save us," he said. "You're a woman who chose to stay, and that's braver than any angel." Winter returned faster than expected that year. One night, a storm rolled in without warning. The power went out, plunging the farmhouse into darkness. Wind screamed against the windows, just like the night Daniel had found her in the barn. Clara froze. Her breath shortened. Her hands trembled. Daniel noticed immediately. "Hey," he said, lighting a lantern. "You're here. You're safe." But Clara wasn't hearing him. She was back in that barn,